You've dabbled with aliens. Now meet the genuine article.
The Genuine Article, a Doctor Who podcast by James Sumner. Episode 3, Wild Blue Yonder. After Donna destroys the Tardis console with an application of coffee, the Doctor and Donna are thrown to the edge of the universe where the walls are thin and anything can happen. My co-hosts are busy this week, so here are my thoughts on the episode. I simultaneously quite liked Wild Blue Yonder, and I really hated it. I'm not going to get into spoilers for a second, but on the most part, I think the special effects didn't live up to the delivery that they wanted. I am fine with Doctor Who looking cheap. If anything, I think a lot of the best episodes of Doctor Who look a bit naff. However, they're not normally trying to be scary. This episode was ambitious, much more ambitious than the Star Beast. However, I feel like it messed up the delivery a little bit. The setting looked awful. As Doctor Who fan 91 pointed out, I can't believe they'd set it in the Flash's particle accelerator. The Star Beast is an interesting problem because it had loads to cover. It had to deal with the Donna problem, it had to deal with the Doctor's new face, it had to deal with so many factors, and it did some a lot better than others, and the pacing was a bit janky, and some of the lines were very cheesy. But I think because it had so much to get through in a single episode, I'm impressed with how much the Star Beast was still fun at the same time. Whereas this had one premise and a long time to deal with, and I think it was still feeling quite rushed. I'm just going to talk about spoilers. I quite liked the alien threat this week, but I feel like it was very hampered by the setting. I've seen people say that the cheap effects were fine because it added to the alien element of the creatures that had become the Doctor and Donna. However, my problems with the special effects aren't them, it's the corridor. I can believe that these weird alien monsters would look weird and be morphing and changing, and the CG would look a bit wonky. I really didn't like that shot with David's head between his legs. However, if I don't believe that they're on a real spaceship, if I don't believe that this room exists, it's really hard to take a very long chase seriously when it looks like they're running on a treadmill. I also found the pacing to just speed up and slow down at random. The red and blue room scene, I think, is amazing. It was slow, it was plodding, and it really hit hard when you realised that something was wrong. Although I do think they could have done a better job hiding Donna's alien being an imposter. But then if you look at the rest of the episode, they run into a room, and all four of them are there. Then they run out of the room, and it's two of them. Then they run into a room, and it's four of them. And it just feels a little bit like a farce at some points. And now that can be good. There are episodes that have tried to be funnier. Like, I don't love The Unicorn and the Wasp, but you can appreciate the fact that it's going for a very campy tone. Whereas this episode can't seem to decide whether it wants to be really stupid or really scary. And it kind of flip-flops between. And for me, that took me out a little bit. And I can see why some people would enjoy that. But I wasn't super loving it. And I have another issue that I'm not 100% sure that anyone else has complained about yet. It's the TARDIS playing music and hovering and floating. It feels like the sonic screwdriver and the TARDIS have changed very considerably since our last episode with Jodie. And I really feel like we need an explanation for that. And if there is one in the comics, cool, but I shouldn't have to read a comic to understand what the hell's going on in the television show that I watch. And for the record, I'm fine with the TARDIS having more personality again and blaring out music and being fun. Or the Sonic having screens and protectors and force fields and all sorts of interesting things. Cool, add them if you want. But can we just get like a line? Can we get a single line where Donna asks about it? Just never used to do that. Or that the Doctor goes, I upgraded it on some planet. Interesting explanations for why some things are different. Either change it and address it or don't change it. At least is how I feel. And I think this is why I'm more forgiving of the Star Beast than I am of this episode. The Star Beast Donna had amnesia. The only person who'd actually know how things worked couldn't say. It had to deal with Donna getting her memory back, it had to introduce the new Noble family members, it had to deal with all of that mess. And it still was fun whilst doing it. So I was impressed with how much it managed to get away with, despite being a heavy exposition episode for people who liked the show in 2008. Something highlighted by Mr. Tardis on Twitter. Did this need to be a David and Donna episode? And I would argue that it may have been stronger if it wasn't. Donna and David are such a seasoned team that they're fairly trusting in each other. They figured out pretty quickly which one was the clone. Obviously, David had that wobble at the end, which I would like to come back to in a minute. But I think that this team is so seasoned that they are pretty chill with the situation, despite how horrible it is. Like, Donna has a few family worries, but other than that, she's fairly, stoic in the face of everything. I think maybe if we'd had a companion team that didn't know each other very well, maybe if it was in Ncuti and Ruby's first series, then it could have been more interesting. A Doctor who doesn't know that much about his companion, or a companion who doesn't know that much about the Doctor yet, so there'd be more reason to distrust and less ways that they could tell each other apart. There'd be more tension there. I think when it's one of 3 specials, this really loses its impact in terms of being a step away from normal Doctor Who. There's a reason why Midnight hits so hard and Blink hits so hard. It's because they're really different. They come in the middle of their series. You're used to what Doctor and Donna is like by the time you get to Midnight. And you're like, wow, this is different. This is crazy. I don't know what Donna and 14 are like yet. Obviously, so far it seems like he's just 10. But he's 10 with a lot of baggage to go with. He's got all of the Capaldi, Smith, and Jodie years. So I don't know what this man is like. And so how am I supposed to tell what a normal Doctor and Donna adventure looks like? Addressing the Flux's damage was nice, although I feel like it does open a weird kettle of fish, where it's gonna be hard to talk about Flux about him being really traumatized by it, I guess. He was pretty messed up after the Time War, and this is probably the biggest failure he's had since then, I'd say. I came into the episode expecting very little, I did not know what we were gonna get. People were wildly speculating about a multi-Doctor return. I didn't see that as particularly likely. However, who knows what we were gonna get. And then we got it, and it starts with a very jokey scene of Newton. I appreciate the Mavity joke, although I don't like historical changes like that in Doctor Who if they don't go and fix it after. So either they better keep the Mavity thing going, or I just want a scene of them fixing it, but I don't think we're going to get that from the tone of these specials. I think for a Doppelganger episode, they did very little interesting stuff with the premise. I think the most interesting stuff is obviously David getting traumatized about the Flux and about the Timeless Child, which is cool, but it's just a very quick scene. The most impressed I was in the whole concept was Donna noticing that the tie had disappeared off the floor, although that was the alien's idea, so I still think it's maybe less agency for Donna. Maybe Donna could have suggested it and then the alien forgot. I don't know. I didn't love that it was their idea and not Donna's, but I think Donna noticing it was a really good moment for her, and it was probably the most interesting thing that they did with the Doppelgangers in terms of the premise, in terms of how do we know who is who. Them taking all of their memories instantly, I think, made it more difficult to feel invested in the plot, because they can just say anything. They can always pretend. They can't just pretend through body language changes and turn of phrase, and that's because the Doctor and the Donna know each other so well. You'd need to give them all of their memories to do any kind of trickery. If you had a Doctor and a companion who didn't know each other very well, the aliens might be able to do it just from watching them for the first half of the episode. And I really think they did the memory thing, the live uplink of the memory, because they really liked the idea of the Doctor figuring out the problem and that being an issue. David's live solving of the mystery, updating as he spoke in the head of the enemy, meaning that the enemy is just as smart and gets smarter the more that the Doctor thinks about the problem. That's a cool idea. I really liked that scene. It was the only part where I felt the memory stuff was good, other than Donna clone using the Flux to traumatize David. I think we need a scene or two of 14 and Donna just talking. They do. You could argue that they get that when they're walking down the corridor and they're talking about the Doctor's fluid sexuality, but that's not about the plot. That's not about him as a developing person. That's just like an incidental fact. It's like adding the non-binary line last week. You can't call that character development. That's a fact. It's an interesting fact, but it's not like it moves him forward as a person. 14 is much like 13, in which they don't tell the companions anything in detail. They're happy to be their friend, but not their confidant. And that's something that I think 10 did a good job of. When forced, Martha made him sit down and tell her everything. And he did. Even if we didn't watch it, I think we needed a scene where him and Donna are flying in the TARDIS and it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you the tea. And they sit and spill. And we don't need to watch it happen, but I just need to know that it's happened, because I don't see why Donna would trust him right now, because he's hiding things. And the final choice. The final choice is something that I keep thinking about. He accidentally takes the clone Donna and leaves the real Donna for a second, whilst, it was very much Donna's fault for giving the most alien example ever. I get what they're going for. The human tries to over-explain it, whereas the alien is more logical and natural, and so therefore it just pounced on it. But this shouldn't have been brushed over so quickly. He almost left her to her death. I think back to Kill the Moon, Clara and Capaldi. This should have led, and I'm not saying that I want to see this, I don't want to see this between 14 and Donna in these specials, but if this was, let's say, a normal series, and a companion that has more episodes to come that we can break and establish this and do it properly, this would have led to a massive fracture in the friendship, I think. He chose the wrong one. Even though it wasn't his fault, imagine how you'd feel if you were being left to your death by your best friend in the world because he thought that you weren't you. Maybe we could have kept both Donnas moving into the next episode, and it'd be like, well, one of these Donnas is fake, but we'll figure that out later. We don't have time. But I just think that this would have led to a Clara style, I can't trust her anymore. How dare you put me in danger like that? Especially as Donna has an entire family waiting for her. Clara had a boyfriend, but she didn't have a lot tying her to the earth. She really liked running away with the Doctor. Donna has a firm root, and that's something that keeps coming back over the course of this episode. And like I say, I don't need Doctor Who to look good. I put on the 5 Doctors special after this, which involves big magic triangles kidnapping people, and I laughed my head off. But that's because I don't think it was meant to be scary. It was just, we need to get the Doctors in one place, send some triangles to grab them. They didn't care. Whereas this, they care. I can tell that they care about this episode. They kept it secret for that reason. They put in so much effort in some of the script elements and the scenes, and it was so much effort went into it, and yet there's some bits that just feel like they just rushed it out of the gate. People are saying this is a 10 out of 10 perfect episode. Even if you like it, I can't see how you can say this is a 10 out of 10, just because of the wasted potential of the premise. People say it's the new Midnight. I can tell that they wanted it to be the new Midnight, but Midnight was amazing. I just really think they should have saved this idea for Ncuti and Ruby, I can't lie. I would have been excited to see a new companion deal with a situation this tense. Or even other Doctor combinations. I think Clara and Capaldi would have been amazing in this episode, and this is the opposite of what I was saying before. I think Donna and the Doctor know each other too well for this to be particularly paranoid-wise. But I think Clara and 12 know each other so deeply and so well, and they're so toxic for each other because of how much they love each other. I think it would have led to the clones being very nasty and really cutting through and making each other miserable. Whereas, Donna and David Tennant, they're busy mates, and you can tell that they love each other more than anything. And I think it takes away some of the bitter spite that could have come through in some of these scenes. But yeah, that was just my general thoughts. I did have fun with it, and I'm saying this in comparison to the Star Beast, and I'm saying this in comparison to amazing episodes like Midnight. I think part of my bitterness comes from I've just seen nothing but people say that it's perfect, and it's interesting and it's good, but it's so far from perfect because of just some little bits here and there that I think held it back for me personally, and I'm glad that other people got to enjoy it. I think Donna stole the show here, while David did a good job last week. I think Donna was really putting the work in this time, and I think Catherine Tate's done a brilliant job with that role, and I'm excited to see the next one. I think my problems have been that they've been too quick, too actiony when they could have been slower, both this episode and the Star Beast, whereas next episode they've promised it's meant to be like a blockbuster, and so if they can keep that tone going, by choice rather than accidentally, I think it could really lend itself to next episode. However, I have read the leaks. I don't like the leaks. I'm praying that they're wrong. From the episodes that we've seen so far, they don't look like they're wrong. So I'll talk about that next week when we've seen the return of the Toymaker and the big revenge, the game. Sadly, we probably won't see Wolf again. It seems like the scene that we got is his last one. Very sad, but he's passed away, so it's not like we can do much about it. Until next week, I hope you enjoy the next episode of Doctor Who. I hope I do too, and we'll talk about it in the next episode of The Genuine Article. We also want to say a big thank you to our subscribers who make these possible. Charlotte, Zach, Nick, Nathan, Cracker Joe, Solo Andy, Series, Chris, Anastasia, Sean, Ben, Chaos, Zaid, Z, Corin, Eric, and Wolfie. Big appreciation to all of you, and tune in next week for our next adventure in time and space.